Okay, so let us start na po. So, kahapon po ay diniscuss natin kung paano yung accounting sa lessee side. So, today naman po, we will be discussing kung paano mag-account si lessor o yung nagpapagamit ng asset. So, basically, from PAS 17, very minimal lang yung naging changes. And to the point na halos hindi siya obvious talaga. So, for our audience na medyo a long time ago na graduate, mas makaka-relate po kayo dito sa Lessor Accounting dahil halos kamukha po na yung accounting under PAS 17. Okay? So, who are the lessors? So, kahapon, hindi ko kinlassify yung lessees. So, kahapon, hindi ko kinategorize yung lessees into distinct groups dahil halos lahat ng companies or entities at some point in their life naging lessees. So, there's no way na maklasify natin sila into distinct groups. So, in case of lessors, pwede natin silang maklasify into four groups. So, the first one, sa property developers group. So, sino dito mahilig magpunta ng mall? So, yan. At yun yung best example natin. Yung mga developers natin like SMDC, Ayala Land, Mega World. So, they develop properties para maka-earn ng cash from the properties through renting out. Diba? Yung mga merchants doon, like yung mga nagtitinda ng mga damit, so sila yung mga lessees. So they earn rent. So the lessors earn rent from those merchants. So next, manufacturers and their captive lease companies. So normally, ito yung mga nagmamanufacture ng cars, mga machinery, equipment, kung saan para mas makabenta sila, ginagawa nila, binibenta nila in installment. So, kahit in installment siya in a way na nakastructure siya as a lease and yung lease payments, yung parang installment payments for financing yung pagbenta nila nung inventory nila on credit. Next, banks and their subsidiaries. So, syempre, sino pa ba ang pinaka may capability na mag-finance ng mga transactions? Di ba, mga banks? So, ang makikita nyong prime example nito, nakikita ko sa internet ay BDO leasing. Diba? We all know BDO, Banco de Oro, and ang subsidiary niya is BDO leasing, wherein yung main business niya is to finance lease transactions. Okay. Ito, independent companies. So, ito yung mga, normally, maliliit tong mga to, pero they still provide lease financing. So, normally, makikita mo sila sa mga provinces, yung may makikita kayong leasing and financing company. So, yun yung example nito, independent companies. So, sila yung distinct group ng lessors natin. Okay, so ano ba yung mga motivation ng lessor to lease out yung properties nila? Okay. Una, cash inflows generation from properties. So, ang magandang example nito ay yung property developers na group natin ng lessors. So, halimbawa, yung vacant lot. From that vacant lot, hindi sila makakakuha ng cash flows as is. So, what they will do is develop that vacant lot into, say, a mall or into a building wherein they can earn rent from leasing out spaces. Generation of rewarding interest margin. So ito sa mga banks naman ito. Di ba pag nagde-deposit tayo sa bank, medyo hindi ganun kaganda yung, hindi ganun kataas yung interest. So they are lending out the funds that we are depositing to them in a higher interest rate giving them a higher interest income. So halimbawa, ang deposit rate is 5% and they are financing a lease transaction by charging 12%. So ang interest margin nila doon is 7%. 12% minus 5%. So kaya sila pumapasok sa leasing businesses. Ito, stimulation of sales. So ito naman yung sa manufacturers and their captive lease companies. So, di ba mas, kahit sa mga gadgets, di ba, mapapansin nyo, madaming bumibili, mas maraming bumibili if on credit. So, to stimulate yung sales, nagbebenta sila on credit, yun nga, and yung sale na yun, structured siya as lease, kung saan yung lease payments, parang yung installment payments siya. Increased loan security. So, since financing transaction to, bakit hindi na lang din magpahiram ng pera si bangko and then bahala na si lessee na bumili ng properties na gusto niya. So, in this case kasi, yung legal title sa underlying asset is na kay lessor pa rin. So, mas madali nilang makukuha yung underlying asset in case na mag-default sa payments, hindi makapay si lessee in the future. So, mas mataas ang security. So, yung main reasons. So, hindi lang naman yan, pero ito yung mga naisip ko na major reasons. Okay? So, let's jump to Lessor Accounting. So, under PFR 16, basically, finorward niya lang yung classification ng lease on the lessor's viewpoint from PAS 17 na ika-classify into operating or finance lease. So, paano mo bang ika-classify ang isang lease kung operating siya or finance lease? So, ang classification mo, ang titingnan mo dyan is kung whether na-transfer substantially yung risks and rewards sa lessee. So, ano ba yung risks? So, marami yan. Pwedeng risks on obsolescence ng underlying asset. Risks na yung product na pinoproduce ng underlying asset mo ay hindi na bumibenta sa market. So, there's no point of producing those products naman na. Sa rewards naman, pwedeng profitable operations from the use ng underlying asset, pati yung gain and appreciation dun sa value ng asset. So, yun yung mga examples ng rewards. So, kapag yung risks and rewards ay substantially na-transfer to lessee, i-account siya ni lessor as a finance lease. So, all other leases na hindi nakapag-transfer ng risks and rewards substantially to the lessee, i-account siya under operating lease. So, ano ba ang mga indicators, main indicators ng isang lease para maging finance lease siya? So, ito siya. Ito sila. So, take note, itong mga to, ito yung binabanggit lang ng standard. Pero, in actual practice, sobrang daming pwedeng maging consideration. So, it's more of judgmental process sa practice. But for purposes of our discussion, ito yung major indicators. So, transfer of ownership at the end of the lease. So, syempre, if si lessee na yung magiging owner in the future, sa kanya lahat babagsak yung risks and rewards. Next, purchase option which the lessee is reasonably certain to exercise. So effectively, parang nagkakaroon ng transfer of ownership na. Same with item number 1. This term is major part of economic life. Okay? So pag sinabi natin economic life, ito yung number of years or production units na kayang i-produce ng underlying asset in array of many users. So hindi lang sa isang particular user. So this is to be contrasted with useful life. Kung saan, yung useful life na yon is for a particular user lang na underlying asset. So at economic life pertains to number of total years na pwedeng magamit yung underlying asset ng madaming users. So kung makikita nyo, yung 75% na to, hiniram yan sa USA GAAP. Kasi sa standard na PFR 16, ang makikita nyo lang is major part of economic life. So, wala talaga yung 75%. But for to reduce subjectivity of na-adapt ng mga companies yung sa USA GAAP. So, 75%. So, meaning, halimbawa, 3 years yung lease term, tapos 4 years economic life ng underlying asset. So, 3/4, 75%. So, maka-qualify siya as finance lease under this criterion. Or pwede rin 10 years yung economic life, tapos 8 years yung lease term, so 8/10, 80%. So, maka-qualify din siya as finance lease under this criterion. Present value of lease payments is substantially equal to the fair value of the underlying asset. So, 90% din na yan, hiniram din yan sa USA GAAP just to reduce the subjectivity on what substantially equal to fair value mean. So, sa itong mga to, at yung isa pa, specialized nature of the underlying asset. So, kapag specifically fabricated yung yung underlying asset for the use ni lessee, so syempre, siya lang ang makagamit nun. And inisip naman ni lessor na yun yung mangyayari. So, ang risks and rewards ng underlying asset ay matatransfer pa rin due to specialized nature of the underlying asset. So, itong 5 na to, hindi naman siya conclusive na kapag pag present yung isa sa mga to ay magiging finance lease na. So, pwede nga magkaroon ng other information, which is a judgmental process. But for purposes of our discussion, ito yung mga indicators natin unless magbigay ng other facts yung problems. Okay? So, kailan tayo nagka-classify kung yung isang lease is an operating or a finance lease? Ginagawa siya at the inception date. So kung matatandaan nyo kahapon, meron tayong tinatawag na commencement date. So iba ba siya sa inception date? Opo. Kasi pag sinabi po natin inception date, ito yung date of agreement or date of commitments ng parties sa principal provisions ng contract. So normally, ito yung date of agreement. So most of the time, nauuna yung inception date kaysa sa commencement date. Kasi inception date, ito yung may agreement kayo. Like, noong January, nag-agree kayo. Nag-agree kayo into a lease. Tapos, mag-start yung lease on February lang. Tapos, yung underlying asset is mabibigay kay lessee on February din. So, yung inception date mo is on January and yung commencement date mo is on February. So, ano ba ang kahalagahan ng inception date? So, at inception date din, dito natin malalaman kung magkano yung i-recognize ni lessor na amount ng receivable. So, later, didiscuss natin yan. Tapos, yun. So, commencement date naman, doon pa lang i-recognize ni lessor yung receivable. So, magkaiba po yun. Malalaman mo yung amount ng receivable on the inception date, pero i-record mo lang siya on the commencement date. Okay. Classification should not be changed due to subsequent changes in estimates. Sorry. Okay. Yung classification natin should not be changed due to subsequent changes in estimates or changes in circumstances. So, an example niyan, halimbawa, on the inception date, diba, in-assess natin na 10 years yung economic life nung asset, diba? Tapos, yung lease term mo, halimbawa, ay 4 years. So 4/10, so hindi siya magka-qualify as a finance lease. Pero after 1 year, yung economic life niya is naging, let's say, 5 years na lang. So parang naging obsolete kasi yung underlying asset. So di ba, kung isipin mo, 4 years over 5, so parang 80%. So dapat mag-qualify siya as finance lease. So hindi po siya ganun. It will still be accounted for as an operating lease kasi change in estimate lang in economic life yung nangyari. So ganun po yun. Magkakaroon lang tayo ng change in classification once there's a lease modification. So yung lease modification po na ito, same with sa lessees accounting, change in agreement na hindi part ng initial na napag-agrihan ng lessor and lessee. As if parang may bagong contract. So di-discuss din natin mamaya yung lease modification on the lessor's viewpoint. So ito na. Unahin po natin yung finance lease kasi ito yung parang mas mahirap and kailangan natin maging mas focus when we are discussing finance lease. Okay? So initial recognition of finance lease. Ito po yung sabi ko kanina, at the commencement date, receivable is to be recognized equal to the net investment in the lease. So ulitin ko po, at the commencement date tayo magre-record. Next is, ano ba yung net investment in the lease? So yung net investment in the lease ay yung gross investment in the lease discounted using implicit rate. So nakita na naman po natin si implicit rate. So i-discuss natin yan maya-maya. Si gross investment in the lease naman, from the name itself, ito yung undiscounted cash flows. Actually, not cash flows. Undiscounted amounts na lang. So it includes lease payments and unguaranteed residual value. So bakit andito po, sir, yung unguaranteed residual value? So di-discuss po natin yan mamaya. So unearned finance income is a difference between the net investment and the gross investment. So ito yung, di ba, since gross investment is hindi siya discounted and yung net investment is discounted, any difference from those two amounts, yun yung total interest income na ma-earn ni lessor all throughout the lease term, considering there will be no changes. So mamaya may old friend tayong makikita ulit. So stay tuned, guys. So ano nga ba ang lease payments na included sa gross investment? So in short, diba? They look familiar. Diba? Ito yung lease payments na diniscuss natin on lessee's viewpoint. So may mga nabago lang dyan na slide. Like ito, fixed payments less lease incentive payables. Kasi si lessor naman to, siya yung magbabayad ng lease incentive. Diba? Unlike kay lessee na lease incentive receivable. So basically, same yung mga lease payments na to dun sa viewpoint ni lessee except for guaranteed residual value. If matatandaan nyo kahapon, yung amount na i-assign natin on the lessee's viewpoint with regards to guaranteed residual value is hindi automatically yung amount ng guarantee. So pwedeng mas mababa, pwedeng equal, just depende sa expected amounts na babayaran ni lessee. Depende na rin sa magiging value ng underlying asset at the end of lease term. Whereas in lessor, ang nare-receive talaga ni lessor is yung guaranteed residual value. So in accounting for guaranteed residual value, buong-buo natin siyang isasama sa gross investment in the lease. So walang expected amounts po dito. So ito yung one of the big differences sa lessee's viewpoint, guaranteed residual value. So ito po, unguaranteed residual value. So sir, bakit nasama pa rin yung unguaranteed residual value kahit hindi naman siya guaranteed na mare-receive? So syempre, si lessor, after niyang mapa-lease yan kay lessee, isusoli sa kanya yan, di ba? So in-estimate niya kung ano yung magiging value ng underlying asset once na masoli siya. So which is okay kasi parang makakonsider mo siya as cash flow, pero kailangan lang ni lessor na maging reasonable sa pag-estimate niya ng unguaranteed residual value. So, ito yun, lessor's estimated value of the underlying asset upon its return. So, hindi siya guaranteed. So, by the way, ano nga ba talaga yung guaranteed? Bakit may sinasabi pa tayong unguaranteed residual value? So, para maging guaranteed residual value on the lessor's viewpoint, ang mga requirements ay dapat si lessee or a related party ni lessee ay ginaguarantee yung yung residual value. Next, pwedeng yung another third party na financially capable na bilhin yung property at its guaranteed residual value na hindi related party ni lessor. So bakit hindi dapat related party ni lessor? Kasi pwedeng gamitin ni lessor yung influence niya towards its related party para sabihin na mataas yung guaranteed residual value ng underlying asset. So yun yung iniiwasan ng standard. Yung gamitin yung influence ng lessor sa kanyang related party. So yung unguaranteed residual value, sinasama lang siya sa pag-compute if i-return yung asset, diba? As initially mentioned, ito yung expected value ng underlying asset kapag isinoli siya. So kapag yung underlying asset hindi isusoli, hindi natin papansinin yung unguaranteed residual value. So kailan ba hindi sinusoli yung underlying asset? So kung maaalala nyo kanina, yung unang dalawang criteria ng finance lease, una yung transfer of ownership, definitely hindi siya maibabalik kasi transfer of ownership na nga. Same with yung purchase option na reasonably certain si lessee ni exercise kasi hindi na siya, parang reasonably certain na rin na hindi siya babalik kay lessor. So that's why in those two cases, kahit may given na unguaranteed residual value, hindi natin siya papansinin. Okay. So yung finance lease, meron siyang two major classifications. So direct financing lease and manufacturer or dealer lease. So yung direct financing lease, kung maalala nyo dun sa groups yung lessors natin kanina, ang lessors na nagpapa-direct financing lease ay yung banks, tapos karamihan dun sa independent leasing companies. Sa manufacturer or dealer lease naman, syempre yung manufacturer and their captive leasing companies, tsaka yung property developers. So ano ba pinagkaiba nito? Bakit kailangan pang may classification ganito? So yung income items natin dito, sa direct financing lease, since ang ginagawa lang ni lessor is fini-finance yung lease, so ang income lang niya dito is financing income. Parang yung pag-lend niya ng funds, yung sinisingil niya. Whereas in manufacturer or dealer lease, di ba? Sinabi natin na kaya din sila nag-enter into a lease to stimulate their sales. So, magre-recognize sila ng revenue and cost of sales. And on top of that, dahil installment payments yung lease and time value considerations, may charge din silang financing income. So huwag kayo maniniwala dun sa 0% installment rate. So kung kukumpitin nyo yun, mas malaki yung total installment payments as compared dun sa cash price. Next, ang difference sa pag-account nila sa initial direct cost, mamaya i-discuss natin yan, initial direct cost. Sa direct financing lease, sinasama siya sa amount ng net investment natin. And then, for manufacturer or dealer lease, in-expense siya. So, sir, bakit in-expense for manufacturer or dealer lease? Kasi po, yung revenue na kung saan siya related, kung bakit siya na-incur dahil sa revenue na na-earn is, ni-recognize mo na. So, balik tayo dun sa matching principle na tinatawag. So, kailangan mong i-match yung expense sa related revenue. Same with the cost of sales, di ba? So, mina-match mo yung cost of sales dun sa related revenue niya. So, ganoon din po ang reason bakit yung initial direct cost under manufacturer or dealer lease ay ina-expense natin. Okay? May mali yung animation ko. So, ito yung pro forma journal entries on initial recognition. So, makikita nyo, si direct financing lease, wala kang revenue, di ba? So, parang dinide-recognize mo yung asset kasi, di ba sabi natin, pag finance lease, na-transfer mo na yung risks and rewards ng asset. So, kailangan mo na siyang i-recognize. So, kaplit ng pag-recognize mo na yun, is mag-recognize ka ng receivable. So, yung cash or payable dito, it pertains to initial direct costs. So, for manufacturer lease, kung makikita nyo din, wala yung initial direct cost kasi naka-expense na rin siya. So, hindi siya kasama dun sa main entry natin. Kung makikita nyo, yung magkakamatch dyan talaga is yung finance lease receivable, unearned finance income, and sales revenue. So, pwede mo siyang ihiwalay ng isang entry. And depende sa inventory method ni lessor, pero normally, mga perpetual to kasi high value and less in quantity yung pinapalis out. Kasi, kaya mga pinapalis out kasi mas sobrang mahal niya. So, hindi siya kaya on cash basis. So normally, perpetual inventory method yung makikita natin dito. So subsequent measurement. So after na initial nating ma-recognize yung finance lease receivable, paano natin siya, finance lease receivable and net investment in the lease. So paano naman natin siya i-measure for the subsequent periods? So in short, yung old friend natin, si amortization table, gagamitin natin sa pag-measure subsequently kay finance lease. So, yung sinasabi ng constant periodic rate of return, ito yung implicit rate na ginamit natin sa pag-discount sa gross investment in the lease. Same with, diba, ina-allocate natin yung interest and yung lease payment into interest and principal component. So yung interest is i-charge mo to an earned finance income. So principal is i-charge mo siya dun sa net investment in the lease. So makikita natin siya later on kung paano siya nag-work. Okay. So unahin muna nating tingnan yung direct financing lease and yung example niya. So as an example, on January 1, 2022, Perseverance Company, a lessor, was approached by a lessee to enter to a lease agreement to lease out an equipment for 3 years, receiving 1.2 million annually, starting December 31, 2022. The company purchased the equipment at a total cost of 3.88 million, with economic life of 4 years. The company expects that the residual value of the equipment upon its return after the end of lease term is 800,000. Implicit rate applicable is 6%. So, kung titingnan niyo yung problem, so pwedeng pa-screenshot muna, makikita nyo na yung economic life niya is 4 years and yung lease term mo is 3 years. So, 3/4, 75%. So, based on that criterion, qualified na maging finance lease qualified na maging finance lease yung lease na nasa problem na to. Kasi wala namang other information na binigay. So, yun yung assumption natin. Okay, sa pag-account ng sa net investment in the lease, ito yung steps na I suggest na sundin natin para hindi tayo malito. So determine the amount of gross investment in the lease. So ito yung undiscounted amounts ng lease payments tsaka yung unguaranteed residual value. Next is, ito. Since alam na natin yung undiscounted amounts, time na para i-discount siya using implicit rate to get the net investment and yung difference between gross investment and net investment na unearned finance income. So, use amortization table to subsequently account for the changes in the net investment in the lease. Actually, kung titignan nyo, mas madaling mag-lessor accounting kaysa sa lessee accounting. Kasi, amortization table lang yung binabantayan natin dito. Parang, wala kang right of use asset, di ba? And wala ka ring asset na i-depreciate kasi dine-recognize mo na nga siya initially, di ba? Based sa performa entry natin. So, other things held constant, mas madali yung lessor accounting as compared sa lessee accounting. Ano yun? Determine whether the lease is a finance lease. So, yun nga, 3/4, 3 years over 4 years, magka-qualify siya as a finance lease. Then determine the amount of gross investment in the lease. So paano ba siya kino-compute? So annual lease payments, 1.2 million, multiplied by lease term, 3 years. So 3.6 million for annual lease payments. Pero meron ka pang residual value. So for 800,000, this will equal to 4.4 million na gross investment in the lease. So yun yung way para sa pag-compute ng gross investment in the lease. Multiply lang and konting addition. Next step is determine the amount of net investment in the lease using PV factor of ordinary annuity and of single payment, both for 3 periods at 6%. So bakit may dalawa yung PV factors natin? So we are using ordinary annuity for annual lease payments, and we're using single PV factor of single payment for unguaranteed residual, for residual value. So annual lease payments, 1.2 million multiplied by PV factor na ordinary annuity at 3 periods at 6% will equal to 3.21 million. So to get the PV naman nung residual value natin, I take note bakit residual value yung tinatawag ko dito. Kasi regardless kung guaranteed siya or unguaranteed, same yung computation. Same computation natin. Kaya ginagawa ko siyang generic na residual value. Sorry, may PNR ulit. I will mute lang. Okay, so let's continue. So, just to reiterate, kaya generic yung residual value na ginagamit ko. Kasi kahit guaranteed or unguaranteed yan, same pa rin yung computations natin. Take note of that. So, multiplied by PV factor, PV of residual value. So, kailangan natin i-add yung PV of annual lease payments kanina to get yung net investment in the lease. Diba? Puro PV tayo dito. Kaya exercise natin yung skills natin into parang immerse natin yung sarili natin sa PV computations. Okay, so ito yung journal entry. So kung maalala nyo kanina, yung finance receivable natin, yung gross investment in the lease natin is 4.4 million. So yung gross investment corresponds to finance lease receivable account. Tapos, yung unearned finance income na na-compute natin by getting the difference ng 4.4 million tsaka yung 3.88 million kanina. So yung unearned finance income, tapos yung equipment is equal to net investment in the lease. So mamaya, mag-gets nyo yung reason bakit yung net investment in the lease normally equal siya sa cost ng equipment. Okay? Okay, this is our old friend. So siguro ilang beses niyo na siyang nakita. So from financial assets to bonds, diba? So same drill. So net investment natin, plot natin siya. Plot din natin yung lease payment. So sir, ano po yung 2 million doon? Bakit po siya 2 million? So it is 1.2 million plus 800,000 na residual value. So yun lang, just to clarify, sabay mo kasi silang babayaran at the end of 2024. Kaya ako siya nilang. And same din yung timing niya. Okay? So to get the interest income portion, so nagagawin natin, multiply natin yung 3.88 million by 6%. So sagot is 232,759. So yung interest income portion na to, i-deduct natin from lease payments to get the net investment portion amounting to 967,241. So itong net investment portion na to, i-deduct natin from net investment balance to get 2.91 million. So same process ulit. Gagamitin naman natin ngayon for December 2023 yung 2,912,068 times 6% to get yung interest income portion for 2023. So minus ulit natin sa lease payment, giving us 1.03 million. And we'll deduct natin sa previous net investment balance. So yan. Kung makikita nyo, yung interest income ay pababa, di ba? So bakit siya pababa, sir? Kasi yung net investment balance na pinagmumultiplyan mo ng interest ay bumababa din. So in contrast, yung tinatawag nating principal amortization under the net investment portion column, tumataas kasi yung interest na dinededuct mo from lease payments ay bumababa, di ba? So yan, baka tanongin yan sa theory questions nyo. So paki-take note lang. So same relationships din sa net investment portion and net investment balance sa lease liability balance natin. So yung 2.91 million, it corresponds to net investment portion in the future. So in this case, yung 1.03 million and 1.89 million, pag pinag-add mo sila, you will get the 2.91 million na net investment balance mo on December 31, 2022. So, obvious then na as of December 31, 2023, yung 1.89 million is equal dun sa 1.89 million na net investment portion kasi siya na yung last. Parang wala ka nang i-add pa ulit sa kanya dahil tapos na yung lease term. So I will mute lang yung PNR ulit. Okay, let's continue. So, i-entry na natin to. So, paano siya in-entry? So, to recognize interest income, kailangan nating i-credit yung interest income and then bawasan natin yung unearned finance income. Kasi nililipat natin yung balance from that account, unti-unti nating nililipat to interest income. So, ano yan, during the lease term, unti-unti natin siyang binabawasan to transfer to interest income. And then, debit cash, credit finance receivable at gross amount to reduce yung finance receivable natin by the amount of cash received. Kasi di ba gross natin siyang ni-recognize kanina. So, basically gross din yung ibabawas natin sa kanya. So parang ang view dito, parang nagko-compare mo siya sa lease liability. Sa lease liability kasi, hindi tayo gumawa ng siguro discount on lease liability account, di ba? So baka manibago kayo na instead na sa finance lease receivable, i-debit yung interest income, di ba? Kung by analogy sa lease liability. So in this case kasi, gumamit tayo ng unearned finance income na account. So just in case na hindi tayo gumamit, pero baka malito kayo, pero pwede rin yun. Pwede rin sa lease liability, pwede kang pwede mong i-recognize yung lease liability at gross, pero kailangan mo magkaroon ng discount on lease liability na account na parang contra account siya. Ganun. So yun lang, year on year, i-entry natin, same set of journal entries. Ang nagbabago lang dyan ay yung amount ng interest income na nare-recognize natin, di ba? Palit siya ng paliit. Okay? So, upon the return of equipment, assuming fair value niya is 700,000 and assuming hindi guaranteed yung residual value. So, magkano ba yung in-estimate ni lessor na residual value, di ba? 800,000. So, in this case, nagre-recognize ka nung loss na 100,000 kasi yung equipment dapat at fair value mo siya, si lessor, dapat at fair value mo siya i-recognize once na na-isoli siya sa iyo. So, in this case, loss siya ni lessor. Diba siya yung nag-shoulder ng loss kasi walang nag-guarantee ng residual value. So, assuming naman yung residual value is guaranteed and fair value of 600,000 naman yung equipment at the end of lease term. So, in this case, wala siyang i-record na loss. Instead, makaka-receive siya ng cash or pwede niyang maging claim against lessee yung difference between yung guaranteed na 800 versus yung actual na fair value na equipment natin at 600,000. So, when it comes to reporting, so in case na yung mga exams nyo, marami siyang tinatanong na what is the balance of ganitong account. So, tuturo ko sa inyo kung anong relationships ng mga to doon sa amortization table natin. So, kung mapapansin nyo, may dalawang columns tayong na-add. Kung compare nyo siya doon sa lease liability. So, ito yung gross investment, tsaka yung earned finance income columns. So for interest income, same pa rin. Kung ano yung interest income portion sa amortization table, yun yung interest income mo na i-report year on year. So yung gross investment in the lease naman, ito yung future undiscounted lease payments mo. So as of December 31, 2022, hindi mo na isasama yung 1.2 million na isa kasi nabayaran na siya on December 31, 2022. So yung future pa lang na future lease payments mo na lang ay yung 1.2 million plus 2 million, giving you 3.2 million. Then, i-replicate ko lang ulit kasi ayoko maging cluttered yung mga boxes natin. So next naman is unearned finance income. So same with gross investment in the lease. So yung balance mo ng unearned finance income is equal to interest income portion in the future. Diba? So, di ba ang initial nating unearned finance income ay amounting to, compute ko lang, amounting to 520,691. So, ililess mo from 520,000 ay 691 yung interest income portion ng December 31, 2022. So, minus, so 520,691 minus 232,759. So, it will be equal to 287,932. So, equal din siya dun sa future interest income to be recognized ni lessor. Yeah, so, yan yung mga relationship nung yun. So, same pa rin sa current, non-current classification. So, ang non-current portion mo is yung net investment balance mo on immediately succeeding lease payment date. So, as of December 31, 2022, yung immediately succeeding lease payment date mo is on December 31, 2023. So, ano yung net investment balance mo on that date? So, 1.89 million. So, siya yung non-current portion mo. Samantalang yung current portion mo, sorry, hindi ko rin pala na box. So, 1.03 million. So, siya yung net investment portion na mare-receive ni lessor in the next 12 months. So, on December 31, 2022, ang mare-receive niya within 12 months ay yung net investment portion of 1.03 million on December 31, 2023, di ba? Sakto siya na 12 months. That's it. Yun yung current portion natin. So, net investment in the lease. So, ano yung net investment balance niya on a certain date doon sa amortization table. So, siya din yun. So, for December 31, 2024 naman, kaya ang daming zero dito kasi nasettle na siya. Nasettle na yung gross investment, di ba? Na-receive natin yung 1.2 million na annual lease payment plus yung residual value whether guaranteed or unguaranteed. Pati unearned finance income kasi na-recognize natin siya early nung 2024, yung remaining balance, di ba? So, yan. So, mga settled na kasi amounts ito, kaya zero yung karamihan ng amounts as of December 31, 2024. Interest income naman, kaya siya hindi zero kasi for the year ended siya. So, during the period. Okay? So, ito naman, hypothetical transaction related sa example natin. So, pwede kasing mangyari, si lessee, masyado siyang napamahal doon sa underlying asset. So, parang gusto na niyang mapasa kanya yung underlying asset. So, ang gagawin niya, pwede niyang bayaran. Pwede siyang makipag-usap kay lessor na magbayad na lang siya ng lump sum amount. Depende sa magkakasunduan nila kung magkano amount. Bayaran na lang niya para bilhin na niya para ma-consolidate na sa kanya yung ownership. So in this case, as of December 31, 2022, so magkano ba yung balances natin doon? So magkano ba yung, balikan natin yung table December 31, 2022, so ang net investment balance natin is 2.91 million, di ba? So, nakita nyo, 3 million yung ibinayad ni lessee kay lessor para mabili na niya yung asset. So in this case, magkakaroon ng gain si lessor kasi mas mataas yung na-receive niya na cash as compared dun sa kung magkano yung nakabook sa kanya na net investment. So in this case, magkakaroon siya ng gain. Diba? Yung gain on lease settlement na to, so siya yung balancing figure. So sir, bakit hindi doon sa net investment in the lease balance natin siya i-credit. But walang direct credit po na 2.91 million. Bakit po gumamit pa tayo ng finance receivable and unearned finance income? Kasi po wala naman po talagang net investment in the lease na account. So kaya lang tayo may ganun is yun yung net nung finance lease receivable and unearned finance income. Kaya pag mag-journal entry ka, tandem tong dalawa na to, finance lease finance income. So yun po yun. So yung gain on lease settlement, nakuha siya by deducting 2.91 million doon sa 3 million na na-receive ni lessor. So 87,932. May back siya gain kasi wala naman ng pumipigil para maging gain siya. Diba? Kaya siya immediately recognized. So kung titingnan nyo din, kung naalala nyo sa PFRS 9, so in relation to PFRS 9, na-extinguish na kasi yung cash flows dito. So in return dun sa extinguishment of cash flows, i-recognize mo yung gain or loss between sa na-receive ni lessor as compared dun sa net investment in the lease balance. Okay? So let's jump naman to manufacturer or dealer lease. So holding other factors constant, mas madaling i-account yung direct financing. Kasi sa manufacturer or dealer lease, may mga may mga tweak tayong gagawin dyan. Specifically for unguaranteed residual value. So makikita nyo yan later on. Okay? On January 1, 2022, Humility Company, a manufacturer of automobiles, entered into a lease agreement for leasing out one of its cars for 4 years, receiving 1.6 million annually, starting December 31, 2022. Estimated residual value, take note lang po, generic ulit to, no residual value. So para ma-facilitate yung comparison natin, assuming unguaranteed or guaranteed siya later on. At the end of the lease term, when the car is to be returned, is 400,000. The cash selling price of the car is 5,593,415, while the cost to manufacture is 3 million. Okay, so sa manufacturer lease din, meron kang cost to manufacture and meron kang cash selling price. As compared to direct financing na purchase price lang ni lessor nung asset, yung meron kang information. Implicit interest rate is 8%. The lease is structured so that the present value of the lease payments is substantially equal with the fair value of the car or of the automobile. Okay? So, no questions asked regarding sa classification niya kung financial siya or operating lease. Kasi sinabi na nung problem na yung present value ng lease payments niya ay substantially equal. So, let us assume na 90% to. Okay? Yan. Sinabi na ng problem. Pwede dun ulit tayo sa step by step natin. So una, alamin natin yung gross investment in the lease. So yan siya. Annual lease payments, 1.6 million multiplied by the lease term. I-add din natin yung residual value na 400,000 to get the gross investment in the lease. So in this case, kahit guaranteed or unguaranteed yung residual value, tapos manufacturer or dealer lease to, same pa rin yung gross investment in the lease natin. Okay? Next is, determine the amount of net investment in the lease using PV factors of ordinary annuity. Okay, same. Same lang nung concept with the direct financing lease. So, ibahin lang natin yung inputs into number of periods, tsaka yung rate. Okay, so annual lease payments, 1.6 million times PV factor for ordinary annuity. Okay. And kunin din natin yung PV factor ng residual value. whether guaranteed or unguaranteed, dahil kahit guaranteed or unguaranteed dyan and manufacturer or dealer lease tayo, isasama pa rin natin yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value sa net investment in the lease. Yan. So parehas natin isasama yung residual value sa gross investment in the lease and the net investment in the lease kahit unguaranteed pa siya, kahit manufacturer or dealer lease pa siya. Okay. Making it clear? Making it clear. So yun. So i-add natin yung PV factor ng residual value dun sa PV nung annual lease payments to get the net investment in the lease. So net investment in the lease natin is 5.59 million. Ito na ang difference. Okay? So in this case, ang difference ay manggagaling sa sales revenue and cost of sales. So before ko ipakita, pag yung residual value is guaranteed, isasama mo yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value sa sales revenue. Tapos, yung cost of sales mo is equal din sa cost to manufacture or cost to purchase mo ng underlying asset. Whereas, if yung residual value mo is unguaranteed, yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value, hindi mo isasama sa sales revenue. So, in this case, 5.3 million, okay, or 5.299 million yung gagawin mong sales revenue kapag unguaranteed yung residual value mo. Tapos, yung PV din nung unguaranteed residual value ay ile-less mo from cost of sales. So parang somewhat di-less mo siya sa dalawang accounts, sa isang debit at isang credit, para yung effect niya is wala siyang effect dun sa equality ng debits and credits ng proforma journal entry mo. So papakita ko yung difference na. Sales revenue is equal to net investment in the lease. So ito yung journal entry natin. So makikita nyo yung sales revenue basically equal siya doon sa net investment in the lease kapag guaranteed yung residual value mo. Diba? So 5.59 million. Pag naman unguaranteed yung residual value mo, PV of annual lease payments lang. So or pwede mo naman gawin from net investment in the lease na 5.59 million, iless mo yung PV nung unguaranteed residual value to get 5.299 million. Okay. So kung titingnan nyo, mas mababa yung sales revenue nung under guaranteed, mas mababa yung sales revenue under unguaranteed as compared dun sa guaranteed. Kung makikita nyo rin, mas mababa yung cost of sales under unguaranteed as compared dun sa guaranteed by equal amounts. Kaya, kung gross profit yung tatanungin, same sila. Same lang po sila na 2.59 million. Kasi equal yung amounts na niless mo doon sa sales revenue tsaka sa cost of sales. So parang in effect, wala siyang effect doon sa gross profit mo. So sir, bakit po kailangang ililess sa sales revenue yung PV of unguaranteed residual value? So ang view dyan kasi, pwede kasing si lessor, i-estimate niya ng sobrang taas yung unguaranteed residual value niya to the point na yung sales revenue niya is sobrang taas na at initial recognition. So yun yung iniiwasan ng standard na palubuhin yung sales revenue kahit equal ang gross profit. Kasi yung mga users din ng financial statements, tinitingnan din nila yung sales revenue line item na para lang hindi sila ma-deceive. Kaya yun yung iniiwasan ng standard. Kaya yun yung reason if you were to ask. Okay? Kailan nagbabalik si old friend natin sa amortization table. So same drill ulit tayo guys. So feeling ko umay na kayo sa amortization table na to, but bear with it. Siya yung magiging companion nyo for leases, for investment in amortized costs and bonds payable. Kaya if I were you, gawin ko siyang BFF. Not just Beshi, BFF siya guys, BFF. So interest income, multiply may 5.59 million by 8%. So less mo siya sa lease payment to get the net investment portion. So net investment portion na yan, i-less mo siya from net investment balance. So yun lang. Diretso lang guys. Yun. The relationship then between net investment portion column and net investment balance stays the same. So add mo lang yung mga yan. Kung ano yung net investment portion in the future, yun yung net investment balance mo as of a current date. Okay, so journal entries. So entry lang natin yung mga ito. So same din, yung amortization ng unearned finance income, pati yung receipt ng cash, and reduction ng finance lease receivable. Diba? Somewhat pa ulit-ulit siya. So actually same lang yung concepts ng subsequent measurement ng manufacturer dealer lease. May mga certain tweaks lang din dyan, which is I will discuss maya-maya for the example to ng manufacturer or dealer lease. So then I'm just showing you the journal entries for your reference para kung gusto nyo i-solve on your own yung problem, may reference kayo to check whether correct ba yung pagkakaintindi nyo sa discussion natin. Okay? Okay, ito. Assuming that the FV of the car upon the return to the lessor at the end of the lease term is 350,000. So magkano ba kasi yung residual value na pinag-usapan natin dito? Diba 400,000? So residual value is guaranteed. So since guaranteed siya, any shortfall dun sa guaranteed residual value will be received in cash. So may cash tayo na debit dito. Whereas residual value is not guaranteed, nagre-recognize ng loss si lessor. Kasi wala namang nag-guarantee na 400,000 dapat yung magiging value ng underlying asset at the end of the lease term. So yung difference, dito may cash ka or receivable from lessee sa guaranteed, pero may loss ka kapag unguaranteed yung residual value mo. Okay? Sorry, but direct financing this year. Copy ko yan. But correct, please correct na lang manufacturing or dealer lease to. Slide title. So same relationships then. Pati lease payments. Pati yung unearned finance income. Pati yung current and non-current portions. Okay, they hold the same rules and classification. Okay? Limitation on amount of revenue. Okay, di ba napag-usapan natin na yung revenue sa manufacturer or dealer lease ay nire-reduce ng PV ng unguaranteed residual value. So aside from that limitation, meron pa tayong tinatawag na further limitation on the amount of revenue. So revenue is nire-recognize siya at the lower of FV of po yan FV of underlying asset and PV of lease payments discounted at the market rate of interest. Okay, kung makikita nyo po ang lease payments dyan naka-underline, just to remind na yung lease payments do not include yung unguaranteed residual value. So if you will assess yung PV nung lease payments, i-exclude mo yung unguaranteed residual value in computing dun sa PV na i-compare mo sa fair value ng underlying asset mo. Diba? And take note then, market rate of interest. So this is different. This is different from implicit rate. So bakit kailangan may ganitong limitation, sir? Kasi si lessor normally to stimulate additional sales, gagawin niya yung interest rate na i-charge niya sa lease niya ay mas mababa. Kung sobrang baba na talaga to the point na sabihin na niya na 0%, di ba? Pero kasi, di ba, financial asset yung net investment in the lease, di ba? So kailangan mo siyang bawasan yung off-market terms na interest. Kasi off-market yung interest mo, di ba? So wala mo siya i-reduce and i-discount siya using market rate of interest. So yung concept na yon, it applies here. Kaya kailangan nating i-limit yung revenue at the lower of these two amounts. Okay? But example. So, Concur Company, a manufacturer of aircraft, entered into a lease agreement to lease out an aircraft for 10 years. Its remaining economic life. Okay? Annual lease payments amounted to 1.7 million with the first payment due on September 30, 2023. Ownership over the aircraft will be transferred to the lessee. Sorry, may PNR ulit. Sorry guys, we'll mute lang. Okay, so wala na po yung PNR. So ownership over the aircraft will be transferred to the lessee at the end of the lease term. The current fair value of the aircraft is 11,407,138. Implicit rate is 8%. The lease qualifies as a finance lease since the lease term is 100% of the remaining economic life. What should be the revenue to be recognized by the company at the commencement date if the market rate of interest is 7% and if it is 10%. Okay? So, pinapakita dito kung paano natin i-assess yung amount na i-recognize natin na revenue considering yung market rate is lower or higher than the implicit rate natin. So makikita nyo yung difference. Okay, so assuming market rate of interest is 7%. So ang PV natin is 11.94 million. So using PV of ordinary annuity for 10 periods at 7%. So 10 years yung lease term mo. Okay. So ano ba yung fair value natin kasi dito? So ang fair value natin is 11.41 million. So since mas mababa yung fair value natin as compared dun sa PV of lease payments, ang re-recognize natin revenue is equal to fair value. Next is market rate of interest is 10%. Ano yung PV of lease payments natin? So 10.45 million. So yun po yung computation. Okay, so since kung makita natin, mas mababa yung PV of lease payments as compared sa fair value na 11.41. So ililimit natin yung revenue to PV of lease payments. So kung makikita nyo, Di ba kapag mas mababa yung market rate of interest, mas mataas yung PV of lease payments. So mas mataas ang chance na ma-recognize natin yung revenue equal to the fair value ng underlying asset. So once mas tumataas yung market rate of interest, mas bumababa yung PV, so mas tumataas ang chance na yung PV of lease payments yung gamitin nating amount ng revenue. Okay? So let's jump naman to implicit rate. So hindi ko na pinakita dito yung subsequent measurement, pero gawin nyo na parang homework nyo. So I will give clues na lang. So for market rate of interest na 7%, ang gagamitin yung ang gagamitin yung rate sa amortization table nyo ay 8%, whereas under the scenario na yung market rate of interest is 10%, ang gagamitin yung PV sa amortization table nyo is 10%. Okay, so yun yung mga clues. So kanina pa natin binabanggit tong implicit rate na to. So ano nga ba talaga tong implicit rate na to? And gaano siya ka-importante, diba? So the implicit rate is the rate of interest that causes the present value of the lease payments and the unguaranteed residual value equal to the sum of the fair value of the underlying asset and any initial direct cost of the lessor. Okay? So makita nyo dito, fair value yung binabanggit niya. Pero yung fair value na to, pwede siyang mag-correspond into purchase cost ni lessor with regards to direct financing lease. Pwede rin siyang mag-correspond to cash selling price ni manufacturer or dealer lessor. Okay? Tapos yung initial direct cost, so initial direct cost na to, same with discussion natin sa lessee. Ito yung mga cost na na-incur naman ni lessor when entering into a lease contract. Yung tipong hindi sila may incur kung hindi nag-enter into a lease contract si lessor, like commission, agent's fee, mga transaction costs. So para mas ma-appreciate natin, kasi di ba naka-sentence to, so hindi natin makita visually kung ano yung i-equate natin. So ito yung boxes sa table, sa baba. So kung makikita nyo, naglagay ako ng net investment in the lease. Kasi kung titingnan nyo, net investment in the lease tong amounts na to. Pag pinag-add mo yung FV of underlying asset plus yung lessor's initial direct cost. So dapat ito yung maging initial measurement mo ng net investment in the lease. So kaya kinlarify ko dito na for direct financing lease lang yung initial direct cost, kasi diba, as mentioned earlier, yung initial direct cost ay in-expense for manufacturer or dealer lease. So hindi siya mag-form part of computation kapag manufacturer or dealer lease yung nasa problem. So ignore natin siya completely. So ang goal mo dito kasi, kung ano yung sum nung net investment, kung ano yung sum nung FV of underlying asset tsaka yung lessor's initial direct cost, dapat yun yung magiging PV nung annual lease payments mo tsaka plus yung PV nung unguaranteed residual value mo. So in this case, when we are using only a manual calculator, yung normal calculator, hindi scientific, medyo it involves trial and error. So kagaya nung i-example natin maya-maya, kailangan natin try using different rates to get yung implicit rate. Pero may mga clues naman tayong makikita while performing the trial and error. So ipapakita ko din yan using this example. Okay, so derive the implicit interest given the following information. Okay, so annual lease payments for 3 years, 10,000. And guaranteed residual value is 3,000. purchase cost of underlying asset is 26,000 at initial direct cost is 2,152. So parang kumpleto naman na yung information natin based dun sa equation kanina, dun sa table, sa mga boxes kanina. So ang unang step dyan is i-plot natin siya sa equation. So di ba dalawang boxes, dapat mag-equate sila. So focus muna tayo dun sa right na box. So i-add natin yung FV or purchase cost of underlying asset tsaka initial direct cost. Kasi ano to, direct financing list to. Yun yung assumption natin sa problem na to. Okay? Just to clarify, baka kasi malito kayo, bakit sinasama yung initial direct cost kung hindi naman siya direct financing. So we are assuming na yung problem na to is direct financing lease. So yung net investment mo is 28,152. Di ba? Net investment is equal to gross investment discounted using implicit rate. So kailangan, di ba, i-add mo, so kailangan yung amounts na nasa left, ang maging PV niya is 28,152. Kasi kung i-add mo yung gross amounts, we will arrive at 33,000, diba? So it involves trial and error muna. So mag-pick tayo ng random interest. So ano kong pinik is, so ayan, pala, straight ko lang kung saan napunta yung amounts. So FYI, yung 10,000, yung 30,000 is computed as 10,000 times 3 years. Okay. Okay, as I mentioned, derivation of implicit rate involves trial and error, and in its case, utilizes PV factors of single payment and ordinary annuity for 3 periods. Okay, so kaya wala tayong rate kasi yung rate yung ibahin natin, discount rate. So first, 5%. Yung hanap natin is 28,152. So try lang natin, 5%. So using PV of ordinary annuity, so ito yung PV of annual lease payments natin. Then ito yung using PV of single payment, ito yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value natin. So pag pinag-add mo sila, PV of unguaranteed residual value and PV of annual lease payments, we will get 29,824, which is higher than 28,152. So since higher yung na-compute nating PV using 5%, and kailangan nating i-reduce pa yung PV, gagamit tayo ngayon ng interest na higher than 5%. So 4% below na interest rates, out of question na sila. Hindi na natin sila i-consider at all. So ang i-consider lang natin ay interest rates from 6% and above. So try naman natin ngayon yung 9%. So, big jump tayo. Instead na gawin natin 6%. So nag-jump tayo agad sa 9% para mas pakita natin kung alam natin na mas malaki yung effect sa PV kapag mas mataas yung jump sa interest. So in case na ganun, most likely, so magiging less naman yung PV na makukompute natin as compared sa 28,152. So mas mapipinpoint natin yung interest, yung implicit interest rate na hinahanap natin. Diba? Para magkakaroon ka na ng range na hindi ka natitingin pa sa ibang interest rate. Hence, dun ka lang sa, within that range ka lang titingin ng interest rate. Okay, so annual lease payments, 10,000 using PV factor of ordinary annuity at 9% using 3 periods. So at 3 periods, using 3 periods at 9%. So at yung PV of annual lease payments, the unguaranteed residual value using PV of single payment for 3 years at 9%. So pag pinag-add mo sila, PV of unguaranteed residual value and PV of annual lease payments, ang total PV mo is 27,450, which is lower naman. Diba? Kanina yung na-compute natin at 5% higher. So, na-pinpoint na natin na yung range natin, at sinasabi kong range na 5% to 9% yung interest rate, yung implicit rate na hinahanap natin. So, at least hindi na natin titignan yung 10% and above. Diba? And hindi na rin natin titignan yung 4% and below. So we can focus on just 6, 7, and 8%. Mas konti yung computation natin na nag-involve yung trial and error. So ito, tingnan natin kung on our third try, we will get the implicit rate na. Oops, sorry, na-spoil kayo. Pero it's 8% kasi when multiplying payments mo using PV factor of ordinary annuity, using 3 periods at 8%, tsaka yung single payment at 3 periods using 8% for unguaranteed residual value. So yung PV na unguaranteed residual value mo and PV of annual lease payments mo, yung sum nila will be equal to, hinahanap natin na 28,152. So therefore, yung 8% is yung implicit rate natin kasi ito yung rate na nagdi-discount ng gross lease payments plus gross unguaranteed residual value to make it equal doon sa net investment in the lease, which in this case, 28,152. Okay? So medyo tedious siya, pero at least na-appreciate nyo kung ano yung ginagawa. So ano yung importance ni implicit rate. So yung implicit rate din kasi, magagamit mo siya by finding other components ng equation, di ba? So kung balik tayo sa equation, so di ba ito equation? So pwede mong makuha yung PV of lease payments kahit hindi mo siya alam, basta given yung unguaranteed residual value, FV of underlying asset, tsaka initial direct cost. So basta given din dapat yung implicit interest rate. Basta given yung tatlo sa apat na items nito, you will get yung isang nawawala. So, pwede nating gawin, di ba, ang hinahanap natin kanina is implicit rate. So in this case, pwede nating i-apply yung equation to get the unguaranteed residual value naman, di ba? Pero in this case, kailangan given yung implicit rate natin. So annual lease payments for 5 years, 25,000, guaranteed residual value unknown, purchase cost of underlying asset is 110,000, initial direct cost 3,200, and implicit rate is 7%. So hanapin natin yung unguaranteed residual value. So first step ulit, i-plug in natin yung amounts dun sa equation. So fair value of underlying asset plus initial direct cost equals sa net investment. So ito dapat yung total ng PV. Diba? Ito dapat yung total ng PV ng lease payments saka unguaranteed residual value. So ayan, should be PV na 113,200. So ang next step natin is, di ba makukuha na natin yung PV nung annual lease payments kasi alam natin implicit rate and alam natin yung periods, di ba? So next step, using PV factor of ordinary annuity of 1 for 5 periods at 7%. So nakuha na natin yung PV ng annual lease payments for 5 periods. So this is 25,000. Kunin ko lang yung PV factor. So yung So yung 102,505 na PV of lease payments for 5 years, nakuha siya multiplying yung annual lease payments of 25,000 ng PV factor for 5 periods of 7%. Sorry guys, we'll need to mute ulit. Okay, nakaraan na yata si PNR. Okay. So PV of lease payments for 5 years. So ito siya, nakuha siya as 102,505. So since alam na natin yung isang component ng total PV na 113,200, makukuha na natin yung PV no unguaranteed residual value. So yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value ay na-compute as 113,200 minus 102,505. Diba? So ang PV ng unguaranteed residual value mo is 10,695. But it does not end up there kasi ang tinatanong ng problem is gross amount ng unguaranteed residual value, not its PV. So, kailangan natin siyang i-gross up. So, paano siyang mag-gross up? Diba, na-compute siya by multiplying yung gross unguaranteed residual value by the PV factor of single payment of 1 for 5 periods at 7%. So, in this case, kailangan natin siyang i-divide naman. Parang, kasi multiply mo siya to get, multiply mo yung PV factor doon sa gross amount of unguaranteed residual value to get the PV of unguaranteed residual value. So this time, kailangan natin siyang i-divide by the PV factor to get yung gross PV of annual lease payments. So yan, nakuha na natin yung, sorry, hindi siya PV of annual lease payments. Ano siya? Gross unguaranteed residual value siya, yung 15,000. Okay, just to remind you, ano po siya, gross unguaranteed residual value, yung 15,000. Yan, so clear naman dito. So, wag lang po kayo malito dun sa nasa table. Okay, so wait lang. Before jumping to operating lease, ang makikita natin dito, pwede natin ding makompute yung annual lease payments. Diba? Applying yung same process. Kasi makukuha mo, in this case naman, alam mo na yung dapat given din yung unguaranteed residual value. So makukuha mo yung PV niya, tapos ililess mo yung PV ng unguaranteed residual value, which should be total present value, to get yung PV of lease payments naman, di ba? Tapos yung PV of lease payments na yan, i-divide mo din siya by PV factor of ordinary annuity. So try nyo, assuming hindi nyo alam yung PV of lease payments dito. I mean, hindi nyo alam yung annual lease payments. But kapalit nung hindi nyo alam yung PV of lease payments, given naman yung unguaranteed residual value at 15%. So makukuha nyo yung 25,000 na annual lease payment. So ganun ka-powerful yung implicit rate na concept. So madami kang amounts na mako-compute using yung implicit rate. Okay? So kaya ganun siya ka-big deal, guys. Kaya wag nyo siyang tinitake for granted. Okay? Okay, so operating lease. So any lease na hindi finance lease ay, what you call that, operating lease. So basically, accounting for operating leases. Actually, straightforward siya pero marami siyang details na need natin tandaan. So kaya marami to. Marami tayong need na sabihin na concept. So first is generally straight line recognition of lease income. So if maalala nyo kahapon for short-term leases na straight line yung recognition of lease income, so kahit iba-iba yung lease payments mo for the lease term for operating leases, ito total mo yon and equate and divide mo siya by lease term to get an average of annual lease income na kailangan i-recognize ni lessor. Okay? Underlying asset is not derecognized and depreciated throughout its useful life. It is also subject to impairment. Okay? Unlike financing lease, sa operating lease kasi, si lessor, hindi niya dinire-recognize yung underlying asset kasi hindi naman na-transfer substantially to lessee yung risks and rewards. So si lessor pa rin yung nagre-recognize ng asset. And since siya yung naka-recognize sa underlying asset, i-depreciate niya yun and subject then to impairment. The manufacturer or dealer lessor does not recognize a sale. So same reason with the second bullet, kasi nga hindi naman na-transfer yung risks and rewards. So si manufacturer or dealer lessor, hindi siya magre-recognize, wala siyang entry na sale and cost of sales. And i-add ko din, yung initial direct cost niya, ayan, ito. Nakita nyo yung naka-all caps yung all. So kasi yung initial direct cost na hindi isinasama sa manufacturer or dealer lease pertains only kapag finance lease, yung lease. So kung makikita nyo sa definition ng standard, clear niya na finance lease, na initial direct cost incurred by manufacturer or dealer lessor in connection with the finance lease. Yun lang yung ina-expect. So in this case, the initial direct cost na na-incur ni direct financing lessor and manufacturer or dealer lessor, ikakapitalize siya and amortize during the lease term. Okay, during the lease term po hindi during the useful life ng underlying asset. Kasi po, yung initial direct cost na to, nire-relate mo siya or mina-match mo siya dun sa lease income na nire-recognize mo throughout the lease term. So, beyond the lease term kasi, yung initial direct cost na to, hindi mo siya ma-relate doon sa lease income na nag-arise because of this initial direct cost. So, kaya, initial direct cost, na-amortize siya during the lease term lang. And, di ba syempre, yung underlying asset, pwedeng maraming lessee yung gumamit niyan. So, pwedeng marami ring initial direct costs ng ma-incur si lessor. So, if ina-amortize mo siya sa useful life ng underlying asset, magpapatong-patong yung initial direct cost. Depende kung ilang lessee yung gumamit ng underlying asset. Tapos yung unamortized portion ng initial direct cost, i-add mo siya sa carrying amount ng underlying asset. Kasi parang ano siya parang para siyang direct cost na na-incur mo just to have the lease. And it is related to the underlying asset. Pero yun kasi yung sinasabi ng standard. Okay, na kailangan siyang i-add sa amount of underlying asset. Okay, so ito yung mga peculiar items natin. So advance lease payments are recognized as liability until such time they are applied as a lease payment. So on the lessor's viewpoint, unearned mo pa kasi siya. Normally kasi yung advance lease payments, ina-apply siya based on my experience sa initial periods no lease. Pero pwede rin siyang i-apply at the end or the latter periods ng lease term. And security deposit is separately accounted. So, yung security deposit kasi na to, nire-recognize mo siya as liability kasi kailangan mo siyang i-refund later on. Or pwede ring based on agreement nyo ni lessee, i-apply na lang siya as lease payment dun sa last period kung saan nagre-relate yung security deposit. Pero normally, kailangan itong i-refund in cash ni lessor. In this case, financial liability siya. So advance lease payment, hindi siya financial liability. Kasi ang outflow ni lessor is yung service of lease na ipoprovide niya kay lessee. So wala siyang outflow ng cash kapag imimit niya yung obligation na to na advance lease payments. Okay? Okay, so apply na natin to. So on January 1, 2022, Endure Company, with a business of leasing out commercial spaces, leased out one of its commercial spaces for 4 years by receiving 1.3 million on each of the first 2 years and 1.5 million on each of the last 2 years, payable at the end of each year. The commercial space was built and ready to be used on January 1, 2021. The company incurred 15 million for the construction and expects to use the same for 15 years. Initial direct costs incurred amounted to 300,000. The company also required the lessee to pay a security deposit amounting to 500,000 and advance rental amounting to 750,000 to be applied on the last lease payment date. Okay, so parang ito yung half no 1.5 million na lease payment mo at the fourth year. Okay? As a way to induce the lessee to enter into the lease, the company waived 300,000 of the lease payment for the first year as a form of lease incentive. Implicit rate in the lease is 5%. Okay, so kung makikita nyo, yung 300,000 na winave ng company dun sa first year na lease payment will make first year lease payment down to 1 million na lang. So makikita natin yan mamaya sa lease payment schedule. Okay, so assess natin kung qualified ba siya as a finance lease. So guys, kapag may problem na ganun, tapos hindi sinabi kung paano mo siyang i-account. Kasi dito alam na natin na operating lease siya, di ba? Kasi example siya under operating lease. Pero always assess kung magka-qualify siya as finance lease or operating lease. So kaya yun yung na-exemplify ko dito sa mga examples ko na meron pa ring assessment kung operating or finance lease. Kahit obvious na operating or financing lease siya kasi sila dahil yung mga examples na yun is under the discussion ng finance lease and operating lease. Okay? So in this case kasi 4 years yung lease term mo and then 15 years yung economic life ng underlying asset. So in this case, yun lang kasi yung chance na or yun lang yung criterion na pwedeng ma-meet sana as a finances pero hindi siya na-meet kasi 4 years lang siya, so less than 75%. And wala naman ding other information tayo magagamit. So this lease will be accounted for as operating lease. Okay, so ito na yung annual lease income to be recognized by the company. So ito yung schedule. So on the first year, so di ba sinabi natin kanina 1.3 million on each of the first 2 years. So ba't ito 1 million na lang? Kasi sa last part ng problem, winave na yung 300,000. So kaya 1 million na lang siya. So ang gagamitin natin is yung after na yung pag-waive ng lease payment. So in this case, total natin yung 4 na lease payments na to get 5.3 million divided by lease term no 4 years and annual lease income natin is 1.33 million. So in this case, wait lang guys. Wait lang. Ano yun ito? So, i-mute ko lang ulit. Okay, let us continue. So itong annual lease income na to, at yung i-recognize ni lessor as income. So regardless kung magkano yung na-receive niyang lease payment. So di ba? Baka sabihin nyo kasi 1 million lang yung na-receive niya. Bakit 1.33 million yung i-recognize ni lessor? So yun nga yung point ng standard. Straight line yung annual lease income. So any difference, depending kung ano yung balancing figure mo, kung debit yung balancing figure mo, rent receivable yon, kung credit yung balancing figure mo, rent payable yon. Pero later on, makikita nyo kung increasing yung lease payments mo, kagaya sa example natin, most likely puro rent receivable yung i-recognize natin. Okay? So commercial space naman tayo is to be depreciated 1 million annually. So 15 million divided by 15 years. So kung maalala nyo sa problem, parang 2021 siya ready for use. Pero yung first na lease na nag-occupy sa kanya is on 2022. So regardless, kasi ready na siya for use based on sa PPE natin, yung depreciation natin ng PPE, depreciation concepts, kailangan natin siyang i-depreciate on 2021. Okay, so makikita nyo mamaya sa reported balances. Initial direct costs are to be amortized 75,000 annually. So 300,000 divided by 4 years. Diba? During the lease term lang siya i-amortize. So to account for the receipt nung advance rental and security deposit plus yung pag-incur ng initial direct cost, ito yung magiging journal entry ni lessor. So capitalize initial direct cost, 300,000 debit, credit cash of 300,000. For advance rental and security deposit, so debit yung cash, credit and earned rental income, security deposit. Okay, so let us continue. So to account for journal entries, so to record for depreciation expense and amortization of initial direct costs, di ba? Pag-usapan natin kanina lang yung annual depreciation natin as 1 million and annual amortization of initial direct costs as 75,000. So credit lang natin sa accumulated depreciation yung depreciation expense and ibawas natin sa capitalized initial direct costs yung amount na ina-expense natin as amortization of initial direct costs. For recognition naman ng rental income, so di ba, regardless of the amount of lease payment na may receive ni lessor, ang rental income natin is always 1.33 million. So any balancing figure nga, pag debit, rent receivable. So in this case, i-debit natin yung rent receivable kasi ma-receive pa lang natin sa future yung receivable na to in the form of higher lease payments, diba? Yung 1.5 million natin. So unti-unti mare-reverse yan during the latter parts of the lease term kasi mag-increase na yung lease payment. Makikita niyo yan mamaya. Okay. So December 31, 2023, so since equal lang yung annual depreciation and annual amortization of initial direct costs, so same lang yung entry natin for 4 years na lease term. Okay? Ito, so merong additional rent receivable. So ang rent receivable balance na natin ngayon as of December 31, 2023 is 350,000. So it is 325,000 plus 25,000. Normally kasi pag increasing, diba, ayan, nagbi-build up yung rent receivable mo on the initial years. Pero mas maliit yung build up this year, diba? From 325,000 naging 25,000 na lang yung build up mo. So next year, so same pa rin yung annual depreciation and amortization ng initial direct costs. And ito na, mare-reverse yung rent receivable. Kasi yung na-receive nating cash na 1.5 million is mas malaki dun sa rental income natin. So any excess ng cash na na-receive natin above sa rental income is a reversal of rent receivable natin kanina. Diba? So after this entry, ang balance natin sa rent receivable is 175,000 kasi 350,000 less 175,000 equals 170,000. December 31, 2025, same pa rin for depreciation and amortization. And ito na. So since ito na yung last lease payment date, any remaining balance ng rent receivable should be zero or should be fully reduced by this time na. Kasi wala ka nang marireceive on account of this lease. Kasi nga, tapos na yung lease eh. So ganoon din naman yung intention din ng entries natin na at the end of lease term, zero yung rent receivable natin kasi fully na-reverse siya. Tapos di ba sabi natin i-apply yung advance lease payment na 750,000 during the last year of the lease term. So 1.5 million less 750,000 equals to 750,000 na cash. Na yun na lang yung ibabayad ni lessee kay lessor. Kaya 750, 750 yan. And yung return ng security deposit natin na 500,000. Next is, tingnan naman natin yung mga amounts na report sa balance sheet tsaka sa income statement. So, kung titignan nyo, yung rent receivable natin, pa-increase siya nung second year and then pa-diminish siya after that. Diba? Para mag-build up muna siya and then latter parts ng lease term, marireduce siya. So commercial space na cost, same pa rin. Tapos yung commercial space accumulated depreciation, bakit 2 million agad siya, diba? Diba 1 million naman yung annual depreciation natin. Kasi nga po, January 1, 2021 siya available for use and ni-start na siyang depreciate during that year. So kaya meron siyang head start na depreciation expense on 2021. Then an amortized initial direct cost, 225,000. So this is 300,000 less 75,000 na amortization for 2022. And commercial space carrying amount, so computed siya as commercial space cost less commercial space accumulated depreciation plus an amortized initial direct cost. So makukuha mo yung commercial space carrying amount, diba? Kung matatandaan nyo, sinasabi na yung initial direct cost, kailangan mo siyang i-add sa carrying amount ng commercial space to get yung full carrying amount ng commercial space. So ayan. So in-illustrate niyan kung paano ina-add yung unamortized direct cost. So doon naman sa income statement, and puro straight line, was equal lang yung amounts na report ni lessor for each year, for each category na rental income, depreciation expense, amortization of initial direct costs, and net income from lease. Okay, yung net income from lease, computed siya as rental income minus depreciation expense minus amortization of initial direct costs. Kasi expense item yung amortization of initial direct costs. So we will be getting 250,000 net income from lease. Yan, yun yung mga normal na tinatanong kapag operating lease. Okay, so we're done with operating lease. Let's jump to lease modification. So, sir, meron naman pang lease modification on the viewpoint ni lessor? Yes, meron din. Kung meron si lessee na lease modification, meron din si lessor. So, ano ba ulit yung lease modification? Ito yung, kung maalala nyo kahapon or kagabi, yung lease modification, ito yung subsequent changes doon sa initial lease agreement na napag-agrihan later on ni lessee and lessor. So parang may change in lease contract. Ayan. That was not part of the original terms and conditions of the lease. So parang may changes nga. May amendments. Okay, so lease modification, okay, same with lease modification on the viewpoint of lessee, can be accounted for as a separate lease or a change in accounting for the existing lease. So as a separate lease, so same criteria para mag-qualify siya as a separate lease. So in this case, hindi mo papakialaman yung initial lease, bagkus ay magko-compute ka ng bagong amortization table on account of yung additional amendments lang. So, bali magiging dalawa yung amortization table mo in this case. So, same with sa lease liability, di ba? Dalawa yung amortization table natin. Yung isa represents yung original, tapos yung pangalawa, it represents yung additional. So, parang as if may bago ka lang na lease contract with lease modification accounted for as a separate lease. So next is change in accounting for existing lease. So hiwalay ko siya dito. So parang dalawa yung naging classification dito ng standard. So yung una is kung yung change ng existing lease ay nag-result from a finance lease to operating lease. So parang nagkaroon ng amendments. So yung amendments na yan pwedeng halimbawa sa lease term. Diba, sabi natin, yung assessment nung classification niya as a finance lease or operating lease is to be made on inception date. Tapos, yung assessment na yun, mag-change lang kapag pag may lease modification. So, ito na nga, may lease modification tayo. So, as if ang mangyayari, as if alam mo nung inception date, yung unang inception date, na yung lease amendments ay magte-take into effect. So parang, sige, in the context of lease term, halimbawa, about 10 years yung, ano ba? Ito na lang. So halimbawa, 5 years yung economic life ng underlying asset, and yung lease term mo is 4 years, diba? So parang 4/5 ka. So 80%, so magka-qualify ka as finance lease. Pero at the end of, say, first year nung lease term, inamend nyo yung kontrata and meron na lang additional 1 year pa na lease term. So parang after 1 year, isang year na lang, so for a total of 2 years. So di ba sinasabi dito na as if on the inception date, 2 years na lang yung lease term mo. So in this case, 2/5 is 40%, which is lower than 75%. So in that case, nagiging operating lease yung finance lease. So ito yung accounting for the change. So account for the lease modification as a new lease from the effective date of the modification. So as if a new lease siya, pero yung assessment is ire-retro natin. Take note, yung assessment lang, kung finance lease pa siya, yun yung nire-retro lang. Pero as if a new lease siya when it comes to accounting for the amounts na. Okay. And measure the carrying amount of the underlying asset as the net investment in the lease immediately before the effective date of the lease modification. So titingnan mo dito kung magkano ba yung carrying amount based on amortization table nung net investment in the lease. So kung magkano man yung carrying amount niya at the date nung effective date of lease modification, yun yung magiging amount nung asset mo na i-recognize. Diba? Kasi diba, nung finance lease, nagde-recognize ko nung underlying asset. So since hindi na siya finance lease, kailangan mong i-recognize ulit yung underlying asset. So in this case, i-measure mo siya at the carrying amount of net investment in the lease. So bakit hindi po at fair value? So ito yung exception dun sa fair value. Di ba nakita niyo sa examples natin pag nare-return yung underlying asset kay lessor at fair value natin siya nire-record. So ito kasi ang view ni standard dito. Parang ito kasi yung parang ayaw lang niya magkaroon ng kasi pwedeng yung amount ng fair value ng underlying asset sobrang material doon sa carrying amount no net investment in the lease. So ayaw niya nang may gains or losses na nagre-result dahil dito sa modification na to na change from finance lease to operating lease. Okay, so ito yung in-specify na in standard na lease modification. Tapos, ito yung catch-all provision na kapag yung amendment, this modification for finance lease is hindi naman nag-result into operating lease. Ang magiging accounting niyan is kagaya sa modification ng financial asset sa IFRS 9. So, basically, same siya doon nung pwede nyo by analogy balikan yung sa lease modification. Lease modification nung sa lessees side, kung saan ang steps doon ay alamin mo yung revised amounts ng cash flows. And then, yung discount rate na gagamitin natin is unrevised discount rate. So, di ba, unlike doon sa lease modification on the lessees, kasi baka malito kayo, sa lessor side naman, unrevised discount rate. Kasi yung sinasabi ng standard on the original effective interest rate, di ba? So, hindi niya sinabi na revised interest rate yung gamitin. And yung changes in the net investment charged to P&L. Kung i-compare nyo to doon sa lease modification on the lessee's viewpoint, di ba sa right of use asset siya charge any increase or decrease sa lease liability. So in this case, wala kang ibang babanggaan wala kang namang ibang item na na-recognize bukod sa net investment in the lease na related doon sa lease, di ba? So, sa profit or loss mo, i-charge. Take note this is for financing lease modification for financing leases na hindi nag-result sa finance lease as an operating lease. So parang finance lease amended to another finance lease, parang ganun. Parang ganun yung mangyari. So specific provision yung nasa pinakaunang bullet kung saan naging operating lease yung finance lease. Okay? So example of from a finance lease to operating lease. Beginning of the year 2023, Fighting Leasing Company entered into a lease agreement to lease out a machinery with economic life of 8 years. The lease term is for 7 years and involves receiving of 300,000 annually starting with December 31, 2023. The implicit rate is 7%. So based on the information alone na pinrovide ni problem, so 7 years na lease term over 8 years na economic life, so 87.5%, so magka-qualify siya as finance lease. So compute natin yung net investment natin as of January 1, 2023. So using PV factor of 7% for 7 periods. So ayan, 1.62 million. So yung entry natin, so yung finances receivable po ay na-compute as 300,000 multiplied by 7 years, 2.1 million. Then yung unearned finance income is yung difference from 2.1 million na gross investment in the lease less yung net investment in the lease na 1.62 million. So 483,213. Okay, so parang ating direct financing lease na diniscuss natin kanina. Okay, so ito ulit, amortization table. It's the best friend amortization table. So yan, so take note nyo lang yan. Di ba pa nagkasawa sa amortization table? Okay, so ito na yung lease modification. On December 31, 2024, the parties agreed to shorten the remaining lease term of 5 years to just 2 years and revising the annual lease payments to 400,000 in the first year and 450,000 in the second year. Okay, so ano nagiging operating lease ba to? So without looking dun sa title ng slide, yes po, kasi di ba December 31, January 1, 2023 nag-start yung lease. So 2023, 2024, 2 years. Tapos sabi dito, yung remaining 5 years, kasi di pa naka 2 years na tayo, magiging 2 years na lang. So 2 na nag-elapse na, 2 years na nag-elapse na, plus 2 years in the future equals 4 years na lang yung lease term, as if yung lease modification nag-take effect siya nung inception date. So 4 years over 8 years, by 8 years yung economic life natin. So 4 years divided by 8 years, 50% lang. So because of that, hindi siya magka-qualify as finance lease na. So ma-change siya to operating lease naman. So ma-apply natin yung ating steps na kailangan natin sundin operating lease. So first step, determine the kailan i-recognize back ni lessor. Then recognize an asset, the underlying asset, using the carrying amount of the recognized net investment in the lease. So magre-recognize si lessor nung underlying asset, pero i-recognize naman niya yung net investment in the lease para mawala na yung fingerprint ng pagiging finance lease ng lease na to kasi operating lease na siya. Account for the asset and remaining future lease payments using the operating lease concepts. So what do we mean by this? So i-depreciate natin yung asset and subject din sa impairment yung asset plus yung remaining lease payments na future lease payments natin. Take note po, future. So hindi natin idadama yung mga past lease payments. So ang recognition natin is straight line yung lease income natin, di ba? Kasi yun yung operating lease. Ayun yung accounting for rental income sa operating lease. So apply natin yung steps na to. Okay, so determine the carrying amount of net investment in the lease. So in this case, tingnan natin yung carrying amount na base amortization table. So with the presumption ito na tama yung posting ni lessor. So presume natin tama siya. So ang net investment balance natin as of that date, December 31, 2024 is 1.23 million. So in that case, ito yung amount na i-debit natin later on doon sa underlying asset. I think machinery underlying asset nito. So the amount na i-debit natin. Okay, so under the sub-steps, kailangan nating malaman yung gross investment and unearned finance income as of December 31, 2024. Kasi di ba, wala naman tayong account na net investment. Tapos ito lang i-credit natin na 1.23 and then debit machinery. So hindi po ganoon. So dun po tayo sa tamang steps. So initial unearned finance income. So if maalala nyo kanina, 483,213 ito. And then yung amortization natin for 2 past years na. So ilas lang natin. So ito yung carrying amount ng unearned finance income natin, 269,941. And then i-check natin, and then i-determine natin yung gross investment natin. Di ba? Yung gross investment natin sa lease, ito yung future undiscounted lease payments plus yung unguaranteed residual value. So in this case, di ba 5 years pa yung remaining lease term sana before the lease modification. So 300,000 times 5. So pag ma-minusin natin yung 1.5 million, saka yung 269,941, so makukuha pa rin natin yung 1,230,059 na net investment balance as of December 31, 2024. Okay, so entryhan na natin by recognizing an asset, machinery, diba? So carrying amount nung net investment in the lease is 1.23 million and ito yung sinasabi natin kanina na wala namang net investment in the lease na balance. So pag the recognition, diba tandem lagi yung unearned finance income tsaka si finance receivable. So yung net balance nila is equal to net investment in the lease balance. Okay? And then account for the asset and remaining future lease payments using operating lease concept. Okay? Since si lessor na ang naka-recognize ng machinery, siya yung mag-depreciate na siya, di ba? Kasi nung finance lease pa siya, wala siyang depreciation. So in this case, naging operating lease siya, nag-depreciate siya. So initial measurement, so remaining economic life is 6 years. Okay, paano po nakuha yung 6 years? Diba 8 years yung economic life natin sa problem. So, tapos 2 years na yung nakakaraan. Kaya, 8 minus 2 equals 6 years. So, annual depreciation mo is 205,000, 10 pesos and 10 pesos. For the subsequent annual lease income, diba ito yung napagkasundo nila na 400,000, 2025, tapos 2026, 450,000. So, diba sabi natin, sa operating lease, straight line yung hindi siya annual depreciation. Ba't ba hindi siya na-change? So, annual lease income po ito, yung 425,000. Just making it clear, annual lease income po ang 425,000. Okay, so entryhan na po natin. December 31, 2025, depreciation for 205,010 pesos. And for recognition ng rental income, so since mas mababa yung na-receive nating cash as compared sa rental income, may rent receivable po tayo na 25,000. December 31, 2026, so same depreciation expense sa 205,000, 10 pesos. And cash, 450,000. So since mas malaki yung cash na na-receive natin as compared sa rental income, i-reverse natin yung previously recognized rent receivable. So since this is the end of the lease term, masi-zero out yung rent receivable after this entry. Okay? So ito yung amounts na reported ni lessor on account of the operating lease. So rent receivable natin, so 25,000 siya noong 2025, so zero siya at the end of the lease term. So machinery at cost, so ito yung initial measurement natin, so hindi pa siya magbabago. Then yung accumulated depreciation natin, kasi 2 years na tayo nag-depreciate. Then machinery and carrying amount, so ma-minus lang natin yung accumulated depreciation from machinery cost. So in case merong initial direct cost, so for 2 years mo lang siya i-amortize, and any unamortized portion is i-add mo lang din dito. So same concept talaga with operating lease kanina. And then for income statements naman, so as you can see, equal din yung rental income, equal yung depreciation expense. So pag pinag-less natin sila, ang net income from the lease is 219,990. So equal pa rin. So yan. So ganyan ina-account yung finance lease to operating. So that ends our discussion for tonight, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and we hope all the best for you, and keep safe and stay at home. Thank you.